Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Get Smart on Student Debt live Q&A session. We have a translator on the line, so please click on the interpretation icon found below at the Zoom bar to access today's content in Spanish. I am Jessica Herrera from the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, and joining us, we have Lori Burgos from Nationwide. Thank you for joining us, Lori.
Buenas tardes, Jessica. Thank you so much. We at Nationwide are so honored to be working with the Hispanic Heritage Foundation and your dedicated team who shares our same mission and vision of empowering the Hispanic community to build stronger legacies and generational wealth. And today's topic is very important to all of us. It is student loans. We know that 45 million Americans are impacted by student loans to the tune of $1.7 trillion. We also know that the average student loans collect about $26,000 in interest alone. And if you think about that, that is the price of a very decent vehicle. So today, we really want to empower all of our listeners, our audience that's here today, to learn more about student debt and its long-term effect in our finances. So before we do that, Jessica, can you tell our audience how they can join in on our survey and potentially get a wonderful and fabulous t-shirt?
Absolutely. We have designed a special t-shirt for today's session, and the first 50 people who complete the survey we will be sending after today's session will be receiving it via mail. So we ask that you please complete this survey once you receive the link. And we want to thank Nationwide for this special opportunity and the special gift that we will be giving our network.
And again, the whole point and goal of today's session is to financially empower you to make wise decisions with your money. And today we have invited a very special guest, Karen Vergara. She is a CPA and also a financial fiduciary advisor to answer all of your questions from the Get Smart on Student Debt Charla. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to watch the entire Charla, which was hosted earlier this year. But if you haven't yet, we invite you to do that. And I believe Jessica is going to be adding the link to the chat right now. But don't be afraid. We're going to have some really cool segments that Karen is going to walk you through and then allow you the opportunity to ask questions and or comment in the chat. So with that, bienvenida, Karen, and take it away, my friends.
Gracias, Lori. Thank you so much. Thank you to the Hispanic Heritage Foundation and Nationwide for making this important and valuable information available for our Latino community. It is such a pleasure to be here with all of you and share some time with you. As Lori said, if you didn't get a chance to listen to our charla, you can go on the website foryourfinancialwellness.com and check it out after this session. So don't go anywhere, you can stay here. And as Lori said, today's Q&A session really is going to consist of a few segments of that charla and also me answering your questions. We're also going to have a very special guest with an amazing story, someone who's going to share with us how after watching our charlas last year, he decided to pay off his student loan debt. And so I can't wait for you guys to listen to that story at the end of our today's session. So to get us started, I want to begin with a poll question so we can have an idea of who is joining us today. So let's go ahead and get our poll question out there. And so these are your options. I am a high school student considering college options. I am a college student with some student loan debt. I am a college graduate with student loan debt, or I am a parent of an existing or soon to be college student and I'm considering college funding options. So we'll give you just a few more seconds and let's just go ahead and check out what those answers are to the poll. Okay, so it looks like the majority of you are either parents of an existing or soon to be college student, or you are college graduates with student loan debt. So the majority of you are here because you're looking into how to pay off the student loan debt or what the options are for you to be able to help your children pay off for college. So that's a great way to get our conversation started today. Remember, you can go into the Q&A and just ask questions as we go through these different segments. And I want to just start with telling you that if this is the first time you're joining our financial empowerment charla and the first time you're seeing my face through the screen, I want to let you know that I have experienced both graduating college debt-free and then also paying off student loans. And that's because when I got married, my husband had about $25,000 of just student loan debt, amongst other things. If you watch our Charlas, you'll know a little bit more of all the other debt that we decided to pay off. So I have been kind of on both sides of the table, not graduating without any debt, but also understanding how college debt can be a hindrance for us to achieve our financial goals and create generational wealth. So I am very passionate about telling others that you have options when it comes to paying for college. So we're going to start by watching the first segment of today's conversation, and feel free to go ahead and start asking questions through the Q&A box. You have options, okay? You have options when it comes to going to school and not graduating with debt. You can first start working now if you're in high school and start saving for college. You can get a summer job or an after school job and start saving for your education. Your second option is to work during college. So that's what I did. I know, Paul, that's what you did. I used to work 30, 40 hours a week. I know that's quite a bit. You don't have to work as much. And I still maintained a full course load and did well with that. There are statistics out there that say that individual students who work while going to school actually perform better and that get better grades. And I think it has to do something with the fact that we have to learn how to manage our time. So it's going to serve you well if you start doing that.
That's right, Karen. It's interesting that you say that because, again, you and I worked during college, okay, and my grades were fine. It made me more responsible. I had a better time management, which obviously are transferable skills, when we graduate school and go to workforce. And now it's hard because, thankfully I've been, a professional, successful, and my son is a freshman in college right now. Okay, so we had prepared with some scholarship stuff and some college funds, etc. But there was a short gap for spending money and for, I forgot what it's called right now, but some tuition fee that he has to, athletic fee or whatever it is. I said, that's great, son, go find a job. And he said, what do you mean, Dad? I said, and as Latinos, oh, bendito, that's going to distract them. Or I want to give my son more than I had growing up. I get it. But part of me giving him is the responsibility, understanding that owning your own financial sustenance is so critical. So he's working right now and he's actually enjoying his job. He is killing it at school, better than he did in high school. So, I'm, of course, proud daddy moment here. Okay, but I think that's a great gift that we can give to our children that goes beyond that cultural mindset, that influence of our behaviors. Like, oh, I didn't have this, so let me give it all to myself. Well, giving them your son is also, or your daughter, is the ability to empower them to fend for themselves as well. Sorry, Karen, but thank you.
So right there, you can see how you have options when it comes to paying college. You have an ability to find ways to reduce or avoid student loans. And in the Charla, we dive deep into some of these options. We showed one option, which is tuition reimbursement from a company, and we talked a little bit more about that. But I want to take a moment to talk about one of the options that we are presenting, which is scholarships. I absolutely love scholarships. I feel that applying for scholarships is one of the best ways to help pay for your education. So let's take a moment to watch the next segment so you can hear why I think scholarships are so amazing. And here's my all-time favorite option, scholarships. When I was in college, my family gave me a nickname and it was scholarships because I applied to so many of them. It was kind of like my side hustle. I love scholarships, and here's why. Let's say you apply to get a $1,000 scholarship. Between the essay, the application, the letter of recommendation that you need to obtain to apply, you spend 10 hours. If you get the scholarship of $1,000, divide that by the amount of hours that you spent on applying, guess what? you just made $100 an hour. Imagine if you applied for a $5,000 scholarship or a $2,000 scholarship and spent 10 hours. With scholarships, there's this rare opportunity for you as a student to make hundreds of dollars per hour, and people don't take enough advantage of it, and they don't take the time to apply and look for them. So at the end of the day, you can really just combine all these different options that I have just shared with you and not have to take student loans. I know, again, I did a few of these and I graduated debt-free. If we go to the next slide, please. We have some scholarship resources here that we have available. But I want to briefly touch on these last two options when it comes to these resources. If you know what you want to do when you get out of college, then you could look into trade or membership organizations within the industry that you are pursuing. So for instance, if you want to be a CPA in the state of Florida, then you could look into Florida Institute of CPA's Scholarship Foundation. Another great option is to look for and apply for local scholarships. They usually have less applicants and you have a higher chance at winning. You can usually look for these kinds of opportunities in social media, in local, digital, and printed newspapers. And one of the best places that you can find these opportunities if you go to your school's financial aid website. So there you go. You have learned about all the different ways why scholarships are so valuable and why you should be actually applying for them as soon as possible. I know that there's a question somebody asked, how young can you start applying? My son is 12. So Yolanda, you can start applying, very early on. Starting in high school is when I started applying for scholarships, basically all throughout high school. One of the best things also to do, I don't know what it's like in other states, but here in the state of Florida, we have a state-funded scholarship. It's through the lotto, and it's called Bright Futures. And it's very important that the high school student meets certain criteria. So there needs to be community service, there need to be certain classes that need to be taken for you to be able to apply for this scholarship, which in my case, an SAT scores, ACT scores, and if you waited until your senior year to start looking into Bright Futures, which covers either 100% or 75% of an in-state public university here in Florida, then it's too late. So you want to ensure that your son is, as soon as possible, even before high school, look into see if there's something like that for your specific state. And if there's anything available like that, make sure that he is meeting those requirements throughout school. And then high school, it is the best time to be applying for scholarships. That's where you can go into all the websites of the universities that he or she's thinking of going to, and then considering what those options are there. Let's go ahead and then I want to mention something else in here that we didn't actually have in the last Charla, and so this is kind of brand new information for those of you who are joining us today, and it's the FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid. This form is going to determine your financial aid from the government and most colleges. Now, I'm an immigrant. I moved to the US when I was 12 years old. My parents, new system, immigrants themselves, they had no idea how to maneuver and navigate the college process, application process, and then none of the financial aid process. So one of the things that I learned is that you need to fill out the FAFSA every single year, okay? And what this application is, it's completely free. You go on the FAFSA website, I believe it's fafsa.gov or .edu, just make sure you go to the right one. And it's going to collect a lot of personal information, personal and financial information of the parents of the student. What type of assets do they have? Do they have investments? Do they have savings? So that it's going to calculate, it's a specific formula that it applies a formula to determine your expected family contribution, so your EFC. And that amount is important, that number is important, because that is how the government determines whether they're going to give you grants, like a Pell Grant, which is again free money from the government for you to go to school. Scholarship foundations use this number as well to determine if there's a need for you to also get the scholarship. And colleges actually use this to create their financial aid package that is going to be provided once the student is accepted into the university. So very important information. Make sure you get this done every single year. Don't wait until the last minute, because you will need tax returns. You will need a lot of information, but it's all online, and it's now with YouTube. I mean, back in my day, we didn't have all these YouTube videos. I'm sure you can go in, Google how to fill out the Fafsa, and you can get more information, but it's very important that you do that as well. So let's also look at something that we discussed in the last charla, which was the average tuition and rates at different colleges, because it is important that you understand how much you are going to be paying for school. Okay, so for those of you who have your parents thinking about their kids going to school, or you're a college graduate but you're thinking about post-grad, well, it's very important that you understand the average tuition. How much am I expected to be paying in different schools? So as you can see here, a private school, it's about $35,000 a year. And again, this is just tuition. We're not considering room and board. We're not considering book fees or etc. Just simply tuition versus a public out-of-state school or a public in-state. Okay, it's very important that you run the numbers and you see, can we afford this? And if you watch our charla, you heard the story of how I applied to both a private school and a public in-state school. And when I got the financial aid package, again, because I filled out my FAFSA form, the private school was going to give me a $25,000 scholarship per year, but there was still going to be a gap. I was still going to have to take student loans to pay for that school. So I decided to go with the public, which only gave me a $1,000 scholarship. But because I had Bright Futures, which covered 100% of the tuition, my school was covered for. And then on top of that, I got more scholarships to pay for my other expenses like room and board, etc. But that just there tells you how important it is that you do the numbers, that you calculate, that you look and see, okay, how much is my tuition compared to how much they're going to give me? Is there a gap? Because if there is, then you're more than likely going to have to take student loans to pay for that. So if you take all of those things into consideration, then you're going to be better off than you simply just blindly going in and signing promissory notes, not really knowing how much the college education is going to cost you. Let's see if you have any questions here. We'll talk a little bit. Okay, so someone's asking about refinancing student loans, a special federal. Let's see. So today, one of the things that I'm going to be if you go back to watch our charla, then you'll hear how we feel about refinancing, deferring, loan forgiveness programs, all of that. I invite you to go back to it if you haven't gotten a chance to, because we dive really deep into that conversation. But at this point, I would say every situation is different. I can't tell you specifically whether it makes sense for you to refinance your loans, because we kind of have to look at your whole picture in order for me to give you that kind of information. So we won't do that. The EFC, do they take into account a 529 account? Yes, they will, because that's going to help offset the cost of the college education. But don't let that deter you from doing it. Still go ahead and do it. Disclose that you have a 529, because you'd be surprised. There may be still you'll be able to get some money from the school or get some financial aid. All right, let's see if you have seen from this conversation so far how passionate I am about helping others avoid debt, telling our Latino community that you have options aside from getting into student loan debt to finance your education. But the next segment is going to explain the reason why I believe so strongly in the power that you have to change your financial future, and how it's possible to pay student loan debt if you are intentional about it. So let's go ahead and watch the next segment, please. That's right. And I want to show you all an example of how you can make this happen. So if you go to the next slide, Vivi mentioned that the average student loan debt is $36,000. So if you send $1,000 in monthly payment, you can pay off these $36,000 in 3 years. So if you start at the age of 25, by the time you're 28, you have no student loans. Now let's look at two scenarios. On scenario one, let's say you say, I'm just going to continue making the minimum payment of $250 a month. And if you do that, you're going to be in line with the statistics that it's going to take you 20 years to pay off your $36,000. So if you're 25 years old, you're going to be 45 years old. And what's worse is that you would have paid $25,000 in interest alone. So
go ahead.
You would have paid a total of $61,000 between interest and your loan. And not just that, but for 20 years, you had that shackle around your ankle of the student debt.
That's right. The interesting thing is, you said, oh my goodness, 45 years old and you just finished paying. This is real. I have some of my colleagues who went to school with me who said, man, I wrote that last check and they're in their 40s. Okay. And they just wrote their last student loan. So we're not making this stuff up. This is real. This really happens. And then what happens is that's affecting the other areas of your finances, because the whole goal of this is to empower our people to build wealth, not to be contributing to the wealth of a financial institution. Nothing against financial institutions, but it's how do we build our wealth? Okay. So the 80% of persons who are postgraduate but haven't purchased a home yet, okay, so they're in that student loan repayment period, 80% of those people in surveys say the main reason why they haven't bought a home is because they feel they can't afford it because they have all this money going out in different directions. Understand, the average student loan payment in this country is just under $400 a month, okay, if you were actually trying to repay this thing, not just pay the interest. And when you compare that to the average monthly household income per individual, that's almost 10% of your money. Okay, so you're almost paying an extra tax on your income, aside from your regular taxes, okay, and your living expenses, just to pay off student loan debt. Imagine if we could get rid of that, Karen. Show us what that could look like.
Yeah, so let's talk about same scenario, but scenario two, you pay them off, you pay the student loans in 3 years because you're sending $1,000 a month. You would have paid an interest $3,500 compared to the $25,000. So the total paid between your loan and the interest would have been just about under $40,000. Now, if you do that and you repurpose those $1,000 for the remainder 17 years, because again, just reminding you again, average payoff time for student loans is 20 years, 12 to 20 years, but we're saying 20. And you save those $1,000 and they get invested at 8.5% interest, that's going to yield you almost $500,000.
So you're telling me, Karen, that in our hypothetical situation, scenario one, we've got a 45-year-old who just finished paying their loans, right? Mm-hmm. Versus a 45-year-old that was a little bit more aggressive. And again, we could say 1,000, we could say 500, all the numbers are proportional. But if we did that, we could have a 45-year-old with almost $500,000 in the bank and no student loan debt. That's a huge difference. That's a huge difference.
And that's the power that you have. What you heard in that segment was a hypothetical scenario. Maybe you thought, how is that even possible? Is that even practical? But this is why I'm so excited. I'm just thrilled to have Jesús Pérez, who is marketing manager at Qualtrics. He's the founder of 52states.org and Hispanic Heritage Foundation Youth Award winner, joining us today. Jesús, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Karen. Lovely to be here.
Well, Jesús, you listened to our financial empowerment charla last year. You listened to all of them, but you listened to one specific one, and you decided to take control of your finances, including paying off $36,000 of debt in 1 year. And you're going to be done basically with your final payment in November of this year. And I want to share the fact with all of you that you reached out to me, Jesus, after watching our one of our financial empowerment charlas. You decided you wanted to hire a financial advisor. In full disclosure to everyone, you hired me to help create a financial plan for you. But can you please share with the audience what inspired you to take control of your finances and pay off the student loan debt?
Gosh, well, it was so, first of all, this is great. And I love seeing everyone here because I was in the same spot that you are today. And I still feel like I'm there. We're not quite there yet. We're
almost there.
Almost there. I have the days counted, right? It feels like such a big, hairy goal. $36,000. It's not something that I just have available to just give out. And when you're giving and you're having to pay an extra $300, $500 a month, that's a lot. That adds up. And I felt like that was holding me back quite a bit from some of my other goals. And I wanted to make some life choices. So I currently live in Utah. I want to move across the country to New York. You think about New York, the cost of living there is probably 50-30% more than where I'm currently used to. And so I have to take stock of what I'm currently doing and be like, can I really afford to do that? Can I afford the new house, the down payment? Can I afford the car that I want to get? Because the student debt is something that doesn't go away. Like, we're kind of in a grace period right now. So I figured it was the perfect time to reach out to you and get some professional advice. Because as you know, us in Hispanic households, like, we don't really talk much about money. Not something that, it's kind of a taboo topic in many dinner tables. So I decided, hey, let's take charge. If I can do it, I'm sure many of us here can do it too.
Yeah, and I want to just take a moment to comment that when you reached out to me, Jesus, you were doing a few different things, and things that you would think are the right things to do, because you were saving for retirement through your employer's plan, you were putting money away into your savings account, and you were actively paying your student loans, but just not enough to really see some traction. So when I told you, Jesus, let's just stop doing all these other things of savings and retirement contributions, and we're just going to focus on paying the debt alone. We're going to repurpose those dollars so we can pay this debt. And we said you can do it in about a year. What did you think at that moment?
I thought you want to know what I thought you were full of it, but then told me the numbers, I was like, are you serious? Like, this is the thing. So to say the least, I was pretty shocked just to find out, like, we don't know what we don't know. And like Paul said in the earlier segment, you have all this money or little money going in different directions, and we only have so much money. And if we can concentrate all of that into one goal, then we'll be able to maximize our impact. So I was like, you probably know more than I do, and you're the expert at it. So I'm just going to trust what you say and go with it. But I was really surprised. It's when you have a third party look at it, it's like, I don't think about those things. Like, I'm thinking, oh, let me invest in doing like savings for a rainy day. And like, you can, I think what we did, and to be fully transparent, is like, I took a little bit out of the rainy day and I put it toward the debt. And I was like super scared, like, oh, well, now I don't have like 5 months worth of savings. And now I have like 2 months, but it's all temporary. Like, it doesn't have to last a whole lot. Like, in basically a little over a year, it's almost done. So.
And for you, Jesus, and somebody asked this question, does it make sense for you to pay this off again? I can't tell you for sure for anybody out there, because I would have to look at your full picture, but you took advantage with the fact that there's no interest. It's zero interest. So every dollar that you are sending for these student loans goes straight to principal. So you are paying no interest. It's basically 0% right now it's going to be until January 31st of next year. But every single dollar that you paid towards that debt is going to the principal. So you haven't paid interest in this. And that also accelerated, because that meant no money went to interest to pay interest, but rather went to the principal. I want to see if anybody has any questions for Jesus. Somebody's asking, how did he get 0% interest? That's because right now, if you've heard the news, the government has allowed, just kind of has deferred student loan payments and has, for the period because of COVID, 0% interest. This is not something that happens all the time. I don't think it's ever happened in ever. So don't you take this as, oh, you can get 0% interest rates. No, that is not the case. Average rate can be anywhere from, usually for student loans, what I see on average, it's about 6% per year. Okay. Let's see if anybody else has any questions. I know somebody asked. Oh,
Karen,
yes.
I wanted to just underscore what you just said. What I heard you say is that opportunistically, this is the time to be paying off your debt as much as you can. So is that what I heard you say? Because what I'm understanding is this has never happened before and it may never happen again. So if you want to get ahead, this is the time to be putting extra dollars to pay off your loan versus saying, oh, I get a break and now I'm going to go and buy such and such, buy a car or buy an expensive this and the other, is to say, maybe I can sacrifice a little bit in the short term so that I can get ahead with this payment. And then you have plenty of time to buy all those wonderful things with all that interest that you saved.
You know, Lori, that's a great point. And I think it really is kind of like a gift that we have right now for the few months. I actually did the calculation of how much I was paying per day on interest before this 0% kicked in. I was paying like $70 a day, every day for a month. You add, and then I started thinking like, oh my God, the cost of me not paying as much as I can, it's literally like the same that I pay for my cell phone. One time a month, I have to pay that every single day. So it was pretty crazy.
Yes, I think if you are intentional about this, if this is something you want to focus on, this is a great time for you to do it. If all the things, if you are in that point where it makes sense for you to do it. And again, I can't specifically say it's the right thing that everyone should be doing. I would be against my fiduciary duty as a financial advisor, but I would say that it is something for you to consider and look into. Please go back to, we have such tons of information about how to go about paying off debt. We are very much at our firm, very much against consumer debt, and we'll explain the reasons why. You can go back to the Charlas and listen to those conversations about paying off debt, credit card debt, car loan debt, student loan debt, and the reasons why. So feel free to go back and watch those, and I think that's going to help you, but you're going to understand the power of compound interest, which is what Jesus was just referring to. If you understand what compound interest is and how it can work against you, which is, we showed in that scenario, someone paying $25,000 extra in interest alone, or compound interest working for you, where after that same amount of time, you actually make almost $500,000, then you're going to understand why it makes sense to pay off student loan debt.
Karen,
I want to see,
Karen,
yes.
There's a few questions on the Q&A, and I see a few in the chat. One of them says, can we talk about filing for student loans under your own income and not your parents?
Yes, so when it comes to the Fafsa, it all ends up with are you dependent on your parents, and do they file, are you dependent on your parents? And if you are, whether or not, they can afford, not afford, you usually do have to include your parents' information if they filed a tax return and you are dependent of them. So I would say, it depends on your tax return or their tax return if they have you as a dependent of theirs or not. What other questions do we have here? Someone saying 6% is high. Yolanda, unfortunately, 6% is like low in the student loan debt scenario and arena. I've seen 8%, 9%, 10%. I mean, if you go into private student loans, I mean, these are federal student loans, they're average 6%, but there are private student loans which go much higher than that. So be very careful also about that. Somebody asked a question about any info about loan forgiveness. We could go in depth into all of that here, but I just ask you to go watch the charla that we did on student debt, Get Smart on student debt, where we talk in depth about loan forgiveness and why we think that is not necessarily the best route to go with. And that's because if you look at the research, you can Google this. NPR has been sharing information of how a couple of years ago they found that only 1% of individuals, so 99% of people, did not get loan forgiveness approved. 1% of them did. And so the statistics and the odds are not in your favor when it comes to loan forgiveness. Don't let that be your option A. Let that be maybe your option C or D, but have other options, and including one of those being paying it off.
Karen, there's another question here. It says, how do I estimate how much I will be able to repay when I graduate?
That's a great question. I would say, I mean, the best way you can go about it would be to look at what the average salary is going to be for your profession, and then take into account all of your different expenses, including your student loan debt payment, and then figure out, can I even pay this? Because what I have seen, again, as a financial advisor, is that people don't take the time to, they'll just go ahead and say, oh, I think I can pay that when I graduate. I'm going to be making more money. But if you know the average salary of a college graduate, you're going to be surprised at what that is. And then you're going to go back and look and see, oh my goodness, I don't think I can really even afford student loan debt, between having a home, if you're thinking about having kids, etc. I mean, the student loan debt, just like in Jesus' example, can actually stop you from making decisions about your life, having children, moving to a different city, living abroad. I mean, just so many other things. And so if you can avoid that from the beginning and really minimize that cost, then I would definitely encourage you to do that.
One thing there is, I think I looked at every possible option, right? Like student loans is like the very last thing I wanted to do, but I got financial aid from the school. I got scholarships. I got a part-time job doing work study, and then I got everything. I still had like $10,000 like unaccounted for. And at that point, then you have to make a decision of like, how can I finance the education? But I would say that from a scholarship perspective, like there are many other options as well that you can look at. ROTC, like my sister did ROTC in military, and like they paid for all of everything, tuition, room and board, and most in-state and out-of-state colleges have it. Athletics, if your child is like really good at swimming, wrestling, whatever it might be, like take advantage of every single opportunity. Just student loans should be like the very, very last option.
Yeah. Basically, you have options. You should try to look at all the other ones, and then student loan debt be your very, very last option. We'll answer one last question here. Haider says, my son is graduating from dental school in a year, but he has already accumulated around $800,000. Whew. What is a better way of paying off this big dollar amount? Wow. Okay. 100. I mean, I've seen 300. I've seen 500,000. 800,000 is quite a bit. So I would say the best way to do it is to just create a spending plan and figure out how much is left over every month. And what I have seen with this happens a lot with attorneys and doctors that accumulate large amounts of debt, is that just consider it another mortgage payment, because it's going to be very large. If you want to really be aggressive about it and want to pay it off within a reasonable amount of time, consider it a very like a mortgage payment, but really be effective about it, go, intentional about it, do the numbers right, and get the help of someone in that case that can give you that plan. Because if you went to dental school, then you're a professional in that area, not necessarily in finances. So maybe get help from someone that can give you some guidance on how to pay that off. And Jesus, I just want to finish this, ask you one last question. What would you say to our audience today who is considering paying off their student loan debt?
Do it, do it, please, please do it. I think there's three things. First is to have like your reward in mind. Like if you want to, for my case, I wanted to move across the country and I couldn't afford it. But if you want to get married, if you want to have kids, if you want to put a down payment on a home and this is holding you back, like I kept that in the back of my mind as the reason for like why I decided to do it. And then number two would be focus on not trying to do too many things, but focus all your energy and attention in this one thing. If it means like, one less Chipotle trip or whatever, like, and the last thing, it's all temporary. You don't have to do it forever. In many cases, you can do it like 18, 24 months, like whatever that is for you. And if it makes sense, do it. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to be the 45-year-old that's still, think of it as like a tax. Like you already get taxed, like whatever tax rate, you're basically adding on another tax, to your everyday expenses, and everything's limited. So happy to answer your questions and happy to connect privately too. So
thank you, Jesus, so much. Thank you for joining us, for being an example of the power of taking care of your finances, tackling student loan debt, so you can really start to focus on your financial goals. And if you listen to this conversation today, I hope that you have a couple of takeaways. Number one, you want to avoid and minimize student loans. I think we talked extensively about it, the reasons why. But if you have student loan debt today, decide that you want to pay it off, just like Jesus did, and do it ASAP so that you can convert that payment into investments and potential wealth, generational wealth, which is really what we're trying to go after. So I hope you've been inspired. I hope you realize all the options that you have. And again, thank you, Jesus. You're an example of someone who has done this. And so I know that a lot of you are going to be inspired by his story. So I want to pass the mic to Lori, who has a few last remarks as we close today's session.
Thank you so much, Karen, for being so passionate about helping our Latino community achieve financial wellness. Thank you, Jesus, for taking the time to share your inspiring and powerful story. We thank all of our participants today for making the time to join us. We also encourage you to watch all of the charlas. We have 2 years worth of charlas. You can learn about spending plans, which is what Karen spoke about in terms of, getting rid of debt if you already have it. We have an extensive library of different videos that you can watch on your own time and at your own pace at foryourfinancialwellness.com. So please, please, please watch those videos. As you heard, Jesus watched all of them, and that was one of the impetus behind him looking to change his financial picture moving forward. And again, thank you so much for joining us. In the next slide, we have the contact information for both Jesus and Karen. So if you would like to learn more about them and their story, please reach out. Both of them are open to connecting with you personally. So thank you again for that, Karen and Jesus. And again, thank you for joining us today. We hope that you get inspired to really take care of your financial wellness, and that you stay tuned for additional content from us. Thank you to the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. And remember that Nationwide is on your side.